These two had clearly only fallen into a love story that was meant to last forever through a dating app. Yet the moment they stepped into marriage, tragedy struck. Even more bizarre, the killer had chained them to the table, forcing their left and right hands to clasp each other. But instead of looking like they had struggled or fought back, the pose looked more like a wedding vow. And on every victim's face, there was a shocking cross-shaped mark that left people unsettled at first glance. 3 cases in a row had all unfolded in exactly the same way. Yet no one knew what kind of hatred the killer could possibly have held against them, because these newlywed couples did not know each other at all, and their only connection was that they had all used the same dating app. This film is intensely gripping, packed with twist after twist, with extreme revenge, confinement, and tangled family secrets all tightly woven together, until the killer plays everyone for fools, and the ending hits with an absolutely explosive reveal. At the beginning of the story is Rinka Tadashima, a 29-year-old wedding planner who is still unmarried. Even though her job is to bring couples together, she herself has never experienced love, and every night she can only spend a little time with her single father, because ever since her mother mysteriously disappeared when she was little, she has been afraid to step into a new relationship. After all, even the mother who loved her most could vanish without any warning, let alone a stranger to whom she might give her whole heart. So for 25 years, Rinka had kept herself sealed off like this, until one day, she discovered that the groom she was about to receive was actually the teacher she had liked back in high school. But even though everyone knew that Rinka's love had ended without results, she could only force a smile and do her very best to serve the couple. Yet as the wedding drew near, the bride repeatedly changed their arrangements again and again. First she wanted a different bouquet style. Then she changed the guest menu, putting Rinka through one exhausting ordeal after another. Fortunately, the wedding finally ended smoothly, but after witnessing it all with a heart full of emotion, Rinka could only sit alone in the lounge, feeling lost and lonely. Her coworker could not bear to watch anymore, so she urged Rinka to download the same dating app through which the newlyweds had met. This was the hottest matching app around lately. With her coworker's encouragement, Rinka decided that she also wanted to change her current single status. So with a just give it a try attitude, she casually took a photo at home and uploaded it. But after only one night, her account had already gained attention from more than 100 men online. Her coworker curiously screened them one by one, and among them she found a blonde guy named Tomo, whose compatibility score with Rinka was as high as 97%, practically the perfect partner of legend. And so, little by little, the two of them started chatting. He was extremely enthusiastic, showing thoughtful concern for Rinka in every possible way. But seeing that Rinka still looked completely uninterested, her coworker could not help snatching the phone and sending him a message inviting him to meet in person for a date. When Rinka saw that, she was just about to get angry, but then she suddenly remembered a bride-to-be she had met that morning, whose mother had also been looking forward with all her heart to seeing her daughter happily married, just like her own missing mother once had. So Rinka gathered her courage and finalized a meeting place with him. But when she arrived at the aquarium as promised, she felt deeply disappointed, and even a little afraid.
僕は不運な星のもとに生まれたんです。生まれてすぐに駅のコインロッカーに捨てられたんです。唯一の手がかりはこの中にあって、きっといつか生みの親に会えるのを信じています。
The real Tomo Nagayama not only wore strange rubber boots, but also kept talking to himself the whole time. After that,
一つの体に両性が共存している。僕とあなたも前世では一つの体を共有していたのかもしれませんね。
He even took Rinka to personally witness the feeding process of the sea butterfly known as the angel. Faced with such an unsettling scene, Rinka instinctively felt that something was wrong, and driven by her natural urge to avoid danger, all she wanted was to pull away and leave as quickly as possible. But Tomu kept pressing closer step by step, stubbornly insisting that the two of them were destined for each other. Unable to shake him off, Rinka had no choice but to bury herself in work and numb her mind. As it happened, the wedding company where she worked was about to begin a collaboration with that very dating app, because several disturbing cases had happened one after another recently, all involving married couples who had met through the app. And even after death, their bodies had been arranged into eerie poses. The software developer urgently needed this collaboration as crisis management, hoping to repair its damaged image. And it was precisely because of this partnership that Rinka came to know Tsuyoshi Kageyama, the person in charge of developing the app. As he happened to pass by her coworker's desk, he saw Rinka in the photo at a single glance. Although employees were not supposed to pry into clients' privacy, even when the others noticed, they only gave him a light warning and brushed it off. Not long after that, Tsuyoshi's frequent glances falling on Rinka were noticed by her warm-hearted coworker. In order to bring the two of them together, he simply used the excuse that Rinka had run into a troublesome man on the app and asked Tsuyoshi to help deal with Tomo's harassment. And the speed with which Tsuyoshi handled things seemed just like the man himself, mature and steady, and he quickly told Rinka the truth. This Tomo was a well-known troublemaker who had caused problems on multiple social platforms, and even the police had stepped into the matter before. Realizing that she had chosen the wrong person, Rinka could only give an awkward smile. But from that point on, her relationship with Tsuyoshi gradually grew closer because of this trouble, as if the threads of fate had quietly become tangled without anyone noticing. But just when Rinka was full of anticipation for her date with Tsuyoshi, Tomo clung to her like something that could not be shaken off and followed her all the way home, carrying a chilling certainty as he sternly warned her that even the people closest to her could be hiding secrets they had buried for years. Whether it was the fear of realizing that he had been secretly following her for days without her noticing at all, or the way those words struck straight through the cowardice buried deep in her heart like a sudden downpour. In any case, Rinka was so terrified that her hands and feet went weak. After rushing into the house, the first thing she did was ask her father, who was a police officer, to call the police. But for some reason, ever since the day she had answered a phone call from a middle-aged woman asking for her father, he had often stood alone in the living room, staring at the family portrait on the wall for long stretches, lost in thought again and again. Yet before Rinka could truly take this strange behavior to heart, one upheaval after another crashed down on her, leaving her no room to think about the hidden truth behind it all. The teacher she had once secretly loved had only just gotten married when the news suddenly broke that he had died mysteriously at home. And the method behind the case was exactly the same as with the previous 4 newlywed couples, all of them having gone through something deeply horrifying. Only this time, the couple had been found with their hands bound at the foot of the bed, while all the other couples had been found beside the dining table. But the media paid no attention to that detail at all, and instead followed the trail until they dug up the fact that Rinka had been the wedding planner responsible for the 2 victims' ceremony. And on top of that, her current boyfriend Tsuyoshi was the very person in charge of the dating app that had brought countless couples together. With all these coincidences piling up, the utterly bewildered Rinka was suddenly pushed straight into the eye of the storm, becoming the #1 suspect in a case driven by personal motives. And even all of the work she had been handling was immediately suspended. Then, under police investigation, Tomo, who had once been entangled with Rinka, was also summoned in for questioning. His job was as a special crime scene cleaner, and he spent all day in houses filled with a harsh chemical smell, so he had long become numb to the disturbing traces left behind at such scenes. And there was even a hint of unhealthy fascination in the way he viewed them. But because there were 2 police officers present, he reluctantly moved over to the ventilated hallway. After that, the police brought out several photos of the victims and questioned him as usual, but Tomo only admitted that he knew Rinka. And as for the flood of messages he had sent her, he still stuck to the same line he always used before. He had been born under an unlucky star, so it would not be surprising at all if someone had impersonated him to contact Rinka. But instead of making the police suspicious, his suggestive answer reminded them of an old case. Tomo had always claimed that everything was arranged by fate, but he had once stalked a girl he met on a social app, which caused her to fall from a building.
それも運命なんですか？
事故ですよ。僕は恋愛が苦手なんです。だからいつもこじれる。
Realizing that they would get no useful information from this man at all, the 2 officers were just about to leave when Tomo suddenly snatched Rinka's photo away, intending to keep it for himself. With no other option, the police could only head back for the time being. But that very night, something strange happened to Rinka. First, Tomo sent her a photo of her family portrait. But in the picture, Every person's face had been violently marked with a cross. Seeing this, Rinka angrily demanded an explanation from him, but Tomo flatly denied doing it, and even claimed he had never seen any photo at all. One accident after another came crashing down on her, and even the relationship between her and her father seemed to have developed a painful distance. At a moment when she felt completely isolated and helpless, Rinka could only place her hopes on Tsuyoshi, the man she had fallen in love with. And after seeing the message Tomo had sent, Tsuyoshi quickly noticed that something was wrong. After all, both of them came from single-parent families, and the moment he saw Tomo's hostility toward the family portrait, he was able to tell right away that the problem lay in that strange phone call made to Rinka's father. At that moment, it was as if Rinka had finally been awakened, and she realized that all of this might have something to do with her mother's disappearance. But when she hurried home, she found an anonymous letter at the door, and hidden inside it was the ugliest and most unbearable part of her father's past. So unbearable that the young Rinka had chosen to seal away all memory of it. Now that things had come this far, her father, filled with shame, finally confessed that 25 years ago, when computer chat rooms were just beginning to rise, he had met a single mother there and had fallen deeply into that relationship. Until one day, that woman came to his house with her son under the excuse of bringing lucky clover, and even gently stroked the young Rinka, looking at his wife, who had been kept completely in the dark. Rinka's father finally realized that his actions had already spiraled out of control, and he wanted to stop before it was too late. But sadly, by then it already was. After discovering that she was pregnant, his lover still refused as always to accept the reality that they were about to break up. And in the heat of the moment, she attacked the father, who was trying to run away from everything. Then not long after that, Rinka's mother vanished into thin air. He had always believed that he himself had driven his wife away, so for all these years, he had never once gone looking for her. At this very moment, after learning the truth, Rinka was on the verge of collapsing. She cried that she could never forgive what her father had done, never expecting that those words would become the final exchange between father and daughter, because before Rinka returned home, her father had already received a call from his former lover, who told him to go meet her at a designated address. In order to settle the grudges of all those years, he chose not to tell Rinka about it, and with nowhere to pour out the pain inside her, Rinka could only go to Tsuyoshi and confide in him. In Rinka's childhood memories, she had once seen her father's lover. That woman followed her all the way to the kindergarten, then stroked her with those scar-covered hands, and in the end, without saying a single word, she only left behind a four-leaf clover swaying in the wind. But it was not until Rinka grew up that she learned the meaning behind that flower was luck. After hearing this, Tsuyoshi remained silent the entire time, and from that moment on, Rinka's trust in him reached its highest point.
どんな人間にもいくつもの顔がある。それは家族でも同じさ。
In the park where she had lost her mother, she seemed to have found the person who would truly stay by her side, as if the sense of safety she had lost in childhood was finally returning little by little. But without her knowing how unpredictable fate could be, an urgent call from her coworker suddenly shattered that brief and fragile peace in an instant. He said that Tomu, who had once stalked Rinka, had shown up looking for him. Worried that her coworker might be in danger, Rinka immediately rushed over in a panic. But all along the way, her coworker never answered the phone, and when she finally reached the place and knocked on the door with a heart full of confusion, there was still no movement at all inside, until she walked away in disappointment, only for a heavy thud to suddenly crash down behind her. But this was only the beginning of the misfortune, and even worse things were still pouring in one after another. Very soon, the police received a report that Rinka's father had been found dead on a bridge. In a single night, she lost both her closest family member and her friend. Overcome with unbearable grief, she became convinced that the killer had to be her father's former lover. Not long after that, while paying respects before the memorial photo of Rinka's father, Tsuyoshi suddenly revealed that he had secretly uncovered some clues, and judging from the current situation, the police investigation had made no progress at all. So he took Rinka, who was desperate to learn the truth, and brought her to a remote, abandoned area in the countryside, preparing to help her uncover the true identity of her father's former lover. At this point, Rinka instinctively clung to the only lifeline she had left at her side, yet she failed to notice that her boyfriend seemed far too familiar with this place. He led Rinka into a room that had been abandoned for years, yet still remained exactly as it once was, closed the door behind them, and only after Rinka had clearly seen everything inside did he finally tear off his gentle disguise and reveal his twisted true face. It turned out that Tsuyoshi was the son of her father's former lover. Back then, he had watched his mother become hysterical over a man, using every possible method to force her way into his life, failing again and again, and even after becoming pregnant, she still refused to give up. In the end, driven by shame and rage, she attacked Rinka's father, and was finally discovered by the neighbors and sent to prison. The young Tsuyoshi saw everything, yet he was powerless to do anything, and in the end, he could only be sent to an orphanage. Just like his obsessive mother, he deeply hated the people who had stolen his happiness. So when he stopped his co-worker from snooping through Rinka's chat history, his eyes landed at once on the four-leaf clover on the photo wall, and in that instant, the hatred buried for years surged back to life, and a mad idea began to grow.
母さんが苦しむこの場所でお前も苦しめ
It was not until Rinka saw the wall above her covered with photos of herself and her father, their faces ruined beyond recognition, that she finally understood. Another meaning of the four-leaf clover is revenge. But at that very moment between life and death, it was the stalker Tomo who arrived in time, pretending to be a police officer and saving Rinka. But after everything that had happened, Rinka no longer knew who she could trust. Not until she learned from Tomo that it was Tsuyoshi who had taken the lives of the teacher she once liked and her female co-worker. And when she once again faced the Tsuyoshi who came after her, complaining about the misery of his childhood, Rinka was consumed by rage, whose family had not been shattered by an affair. So she lashed out at him fiercely, and after finally venting her emotions, she handed Tsuyoshi over to the police. But after he was arrested, Tomo told Rinka that everything was far from over. He asked Rinka to meet him at the place where he usually worked, as if he wanted to show her everything about himself. Rinka said nothing, and only looked quietly at Tomo, in an almost painfully sincere way. He handed a family photo to the homeowner's son, only for it to be rejected and tossed aside in disgust. And Tomo's inability to hide his longing for a family had only just made something deep in Rinka's long silent heart begin to soften, when she was suddenly startled by the sight of him cutting out her portrait and crudely pasting together a fake wedding photo. Although Rinka recoiled from him, Tomo still did not lose heart, and instead continued taking her along to uncover the final truth. Soon after, the two of them drove out to the countryside, the very place Rinka's father had once gone. Across the river, a somewhat younger caregiver was pushing an old woman in red, now aged and long confined to a wheelchair. The moment Rinka saw the familiar clothes on that woman, she instinctively thought of the former lover who had once brought her the four-leaf clover. Overwhelmed by countless emotions at once, she tried to repent on behalf of her father for the sins of the past, only to be mocked by the caregiver.
あんなに小さかった子がこんなに大きく綺麗になって
Only at that moment did Rinka realize, far too late, that the caregiver standing before her was actually her father's former lover, and the red-dressed woman in the wheelchair, whose legs had been crippled, was in fact her mother, the one who had been forced to disappear. She had told the young Rinka, who was playing in the park, that she would be right back, never expecting that the crazed lover, unable to win her father's heart, would fly into a rage and take her away. She was confined for a full 25 years, until Rinka's mother was pushed into madness, and only then did the lover realize that she did not need a man at all. But her elder son Tsuyoshi still wanted revenge, so the lover made 2 phone calls, hoping to lure Rinka's father there in a rush. Yet when he saw that because of his own cowardice and avoidance, his lawful wife had been confined by his lover for 25 years, he could not bear the truth, and chose to end his own life on the spot. After learning the truth, Rinka felt as if she had been struck by lightning, and at that very moment, the lover seized the chance to pull out a pair of scissors and attack again, just as she had done in the past. But the plan that had failed back then was once again stopped by someone else this time. Everything felt like a cycle of fate repeating itself. In the end, the lover was arrested and sent to prison, and Rinka finally found her missing mother. Although Tomo was accidentally injured while saving her, it was because of that he won Rinka's heart. She brought Tomo a new pair of shoes and a new shirt, hinting that he could wear them the next time they met. But what she never expected was that the first person Tomo went to see after leaving the hospital was the father's imprisoned former lover. She could not understand why the person before her had come to see her, until Tomo took out the pendant he had been clutching when he was abandoned, and inside it was a 4-leaf clover, the very flower the lover had cherished most.
あなたに兄弟ができるのよ。
生まれた時から不運な星の元なんです。そしてリンカさんの後をたどっていくうちに見つけたんです。僕の母親を。
It had seemed that the killer had been caught, and that the lovers would finally be together. But who could have imagined that after everything came full circle, Rinka and Tomo were actually half-siblings with the same father? Completely unaware of this, Rinka had no idea that when the police laid out multiple photos of the victims and asked Tsuyoshi to identify his crimes, he insisted that he had killed only 3 people. One pair was the teacher and his wife, whose wedding had been arranged by Rinka, because his purpose was to lead everything back to Rinka and frame it as a case driven by personal motives. And the female co-worker had been killed for the same reason, to pin the blame on Tomo, clear himself, and then remove everyone who cared for and protected Rinka. At first, the police did not understand what his words truly meant, just as they had failed to realize that when they questioned Tomo before, he had been hinting that Tsuyoshi was using his access through work to secretly send the family photo from Tomo's account in the back end in order to intimidate Rinka. Only then did news of a new case arrive once again. Another newlywed couple had been found dead in their home, and the way the case was staged was exactly the same as the previous 4 cases. At the same time, inside the restroom in the park, Tomo, wearing the new shoes Rinka had given him, was calmly washing a stained dagger. A gentle smile rested on his face, as if what he held in his hand was not a dangerous weapon, but a tool used to create a work of eternal happiness. Having inherited the twisted and deranged blood of his mother, Tomo also believed that the 4-leaf clover could bring so-called luck, so he chose to tie newlyweds firmly to the dining table at the very moment when they were happiest after marriage, end their lives in a horrifying way, and leave a cross-shaped mark like a 4-leaf clover on their faces. In the end, the renewed Tomo and Rinka visited the aquarium together once again. After going through so many upheavals, Rinka had finally gathered the courage to begin a new life. Yet she never noticed at all that the moment she took Tomo's hand, a flash of triumphant satisfaction suddenly crossed his face.